Open the door to summer savings with Arthur's. Value days continue at Arthur's.
Hi, Freddie Roman for bonds. Saving.
Hi, did you hear about the earthquake that registered 10 on the Richter scale? It turned out a concert. Are you in business and want to increase volume sales and revenue? Then give TV advertising a try. Call or write Glendora TV ads and tell enough people to fill Yankee Stadium what your product or service can do for them. TV advertising gives you sound, picture, color, motion, the human voice, immediacy, the big audience, and prestige. TV advertising has made a millionaire more than one person. Now it's your turn. Call or write Glendora TV ads today.
Wall Furniture Outlets, WFO.
What?
Mad and sad and feeling it. Then two unusual weddings. Dynasty's Heather Locklear marries Motley Crue's Lee. Barbara Walters finally walks the aisle, and much, much more.
Pretty good job playing that tape. This was a different kind of tape. It was 3M tape. I was very disappointed in the Sony tape because from 1974 to 1988 we just gave sitting around. It was stored very, very carefully, but something like the glue or whatever broke down on the backing, and it made all kinds of problems of stickiness and everything else. I really still don't know whether it's the tape or whether it's machine. The machine got cleaned up and cleared up the tape track and everything, the tape path and everything. It got to the point where you could get some picture from it. But it really is a struggle. I guess back then they didn't know what it was to have videotape. And here's a suggestion. If you do have videotape, don't let them sit on the shelf for a year, 2, 3, or 4, like that. Get them out, play them, and exercise them, and make sure you know what's going on. We exercise these Sony videotapes every 6 months. We exercise them in May, and then we exercise them in January. Now we're going to move on to Sony Videotape 23, we hope. The date is May the 10th, 1990, on Thursday, and the time is 11 a.m.
Three, 2, 1. Folks, your first guest on the Chat with Glendora is Robin Leach, who is star and host of Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. On account of, you must be tired of lifestyles of the dingy and obscure. What do you say we call up Robin Leach now and ask him to talk to us?
guess who's a guest in your living room today? Robin Leach, the star and host of Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. Hi, Robin. How are you today?
I'm well, and how are you?
Oh, very good, thank you.
That's great.
Robin, could you tell us, first of all, where you were born?
I come from a small town called Harrow, which is about 20-25 miles northwest of London.
And then you went to school where?
I went to school there at the local grammar school. The schooling system in England is a shade different from the way it is over here.
Yes.
But I passed my pre-university entrance examinations at 15, which means that I graduated, but I elected not to go on to college. I chose instead to go immediately to work. I had always dreamed ever since I was 10, 11 years of age of working for the little local newspaper in the town where I grew up.
Oh, see, you started that young.
Oh, yes. And every week I used to send a little synopsis of the week's happenings from school to the local newspaper.
Oh, that's
Every time I wrote that little story, I used to put a note on at the end which said, I hope that one day, when I finish school, I will be able to come and work for you.
Oh, see, that was a good way to do.
And I did that literally for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah?
Asking for the job. And I never heard a word from the editor. Until the day that I left school and I went over to his office and I said, I'm Robin Leach, the little boy that's been sending you the notes from school. And he said, your desk is sitting over there waiting for you. Go to work.
Wow. And how old were you then?
I was then 15 when I got my first job.
Oh, wow, that's terrific. And then what did that consist of? General assignment?
Well, yes, I honestly thought that it would involve running messages and getting tea for the senior reporters.
Yes.
But in fact, what we do in England is that they give to the local newspaper reporters a little village within the town, and that became my beat.
Oh, that's nice.
And that meant covering everything from flower shows to funerals, weddings, and births each week, and calls on the little village police station and fire department to know what was happening in the tiny little village that I worked in.
Oh, I bet that was a lot of fun.
And a lot of hard work.
Yes,
of course. I was too young to drive, so I had to do it all on a bicycle.
Really? All on bicycle. And then did you get promotions within the...
Well, I stayed with that newspaper for 3 years, and by that time I had started to do freelance pieces for the national newspapers in Fleet Street in central London.
Yeah.
And then at 19, the Daily Mail asked me to come and join them, and I was the youngest reporter ever to work for a national newspaper in England at 19.
Were you really? Oh, I think that's a...
And they gave me the assignment of covering both crime and show business.
Oh, there it began.
And it was due to a meeting with a married couple who are still friends of mine to this day and who now live in Beverly Hills that I was invited on the opening night of Anthony Newley's musical Stop the World, I Want to Get Off.
Yes.
And that was the first evening that I really brushed shoulders, as it were, with what show business was all about. And
it really
fascinated me, and I wanted to understand more about what made personalities tick.
Oh.
And from that point onwards, that was the area of journalism that I specialized in.
How old were you then, Robert?
19.
No, you were 19 when you met...
Yeah.
And then from there you went to...
Well, I stayed on the Daily Mail in England for 2 years, and because we have a rather antiquated pay system in Britain, where everything is junior and senior and breaks down at the age of 28, 29, by 21 I was earning as much money as I could earn until I turned 29.
I see.
So I asked my editor if I could take a 2-year leave of absence, and I flipped a coin, heads for America, tails for Australia, and everybody now knows that the coin came up heads for the United States.
And
I never went back after the 2 years.
No, really? Never went back? Then what did you do when you first came here on your tour?
Well, basically my stock in trade is writing. Even though the face now and again appears on television, it's really sitting at the typewriter with blank sheets of paper that I enjoy most.
Oh, really?
So when I first came here, I worked a little while for the Daily News. In fact, I sold shoes at Lord & Taylor on Fifth Avenue in New York for 2.5 months until I could get a job on one of the papers. I used to run every lunchtime.
Were you good
Instead
at
of eating lunch at the department store cafeteria, I used to pound on the doors of the newspapers in Manhattan. And then finally, because of the clippings that I bought from England, the Daily News hired me, and I went to work with them for really a both here in the United States and overseas, to write interviews with celebrities.
Oh.
And
you know what you pointed out here is that you really have to want to do it, don't you? To persist and succeed.
And you must never give up. I mean, if there was any advice, it is that if you really have a goal, if you really have an ambition, then you must never give up. And it's more than just really wanting to achieve what you want as a career, but it's suffering a little bit to make sure that you achieve it. It's not a case of shrugging your shoulders and going only half the journey to get the goal.
Right.
You've got to go the whole route, and if that really means that sometimes you've got to tighten the belt, then you must suffer just a little bit for what is the chosen goal.
You have to give it your all.
Yeah, and you've also really got to be convinced that you can win at what you want to do. You must not rely on other people to say you should be doing it. You've got to be able to tell yourself that with conviction.
Yeah. Yeah. Boy,
So you've really got to believe in your goal.
Yes, it takes a lot of strength. And then after that, what did you do?
I stayed doing that. I've really done that all my life. To me,
Freelance magazine.
writing words for newspapers and magazines is the same as writing words for television, because it's still painting a picture, even though instead of reading it in print, you now hear it through your ear. So to me, it's the same, and it's just a different outlet than what I've been doing all along. I mean, I was, before Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, I was very heavily involved with Entertainment Tonight from its very early beginning days.
Oh, you were?
Yeah, I helped start that program way back when it was just a dream.
Really?
And before that, I was involved for 2 years with the Cable News Network, doing live satellite feeds every day from New York.
Oh.
And I also helped start a show in Australia called Good Morning Australia, which is no different than Good Morning America.
Wait a second. Now, how did you get to Australia when you were doing all that?
I just did it by satellite from Los Angeles every day.
I see. And when you were on Entertainment Tonight, were you in Los Angeles then?
No, I was based in New York, but like I do now, I traveled the world for that show.
Oh, I see.
And it really is 7 days a week of 20-hour days, and sometimes 24-hour days.
Wow, Robin, don't you get tired?
Of course I do. It's a physical tiredness, and many's a night when 2 or 3 hours of sleep suffices. But when you've got something that you enjoy doing, some of the fatigue goes away out of the enjoyment. But yes, it is. I often joke that I travel so much. I've done over 300,000 miles this year so far.
Really?
For instance, next weekend I go to Rio de Janeiro. I fly down on a Saturday night on the red eye. I arrive on the Sunday morning. I film all day Sunday, and I fly back on the Sunday night red eye to be back in New York on Monday morning for work.
Oh, it surely sounds exciting.
It doesn't sound exciting, but that is a lot of. When you do that 52 weeks a year, it begins to pay a toll.
I don't know. You seem as enthusiastic as when you first started.
Oh,
I still love it.
Because I love this profession of journalism, and we're nuts to be in it. But if you enjoy your work, it keeps you young and healthy. work does pay dividends in the end, so always pull up your socks and go to it.
Yeah, you're a walking example of that. Now, we really appreciate you taking the time out of such a busy schedule to give us the advice.
It's our pleasure.
Before we go, we got a joke for you.
Okay.
Okay, Robin, what do you call a miniature guppy? Give up?
I give up.
Microfiche.
Well, that's 21st century humor for you.
Thanks again with your generous time.
Take care.
All the best and continue the great work.
Thank you very much.
Bye now.
Quite a while.
And tell us, first of all, where were you born?
I was born in Philadelphia.
Oh,
Grew up in the Middle West.
Robin, was there anything else that you wanted to tell?
Is Mr. Ernest Leiser. And Ernest, you just retired from CBS television, right?
I did.
And what was your title?
I was Vice President of News and have been for quite a while.
And tell us, first of all, where were you born?
I was born in Philadelphia.
Oh,
Grew up in the Middle West.
Yeah. And then, what school did you go to in the Middle West?
I went to the University of Chicago a long, long time ago.
That's a good school, yes. What did you take, Elliot? Excuse me, Ernest. What did you take?
I majored in history.
History?
Mm-hmm.
And then you
stayed away from journalism.
And you got a bachelor's degree in history.
Mm-hmm.
And then you came out of there, and did you go on, or was that enough?
No, I went right on. My first job began the day after I got out of school. I worked for the City News Bureau in Chicago, and then for the Chicago Herald-American.
For the city as a reporter?
Mm-hmm.
General assignment?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's interesting. And how long did you stay there at that newspaper?
Well, I stayed there until I was drafted into the Army in 1942.
Oh, that would be the U.S. Army.
Right, and then I worked on the Army newspaper, Stars and Stripes.
Oh, you did?
Mm-hmm.
And did that take you overseas, Ernest?
Yes, I was a combat correspondent and served on the front in Germany.
Oh, yeah. What year now? Would that be after D-Day or?
Yeah, after D-Day.
That'd be after D-Day.
1944-45.
Yeah, on Stars and Stripes.
Right.
And you were a writer, or did you go around and interview people for radio?
No. I was a correspondent, a combat correspondent, and wrote for the Army newspaper.
And after that, you went where, Ernest?
After that, I came back to Chicago, worked for a while for the Herald-American, and then I went back overseas and became a foreign correspondent. Did a lot of magazine writing, and then in 1953 joined CBS.
And for whom was that magazine writing?
Oh, magazines that no longer exist. Collier's, the Saturday Evening Post.
Oh, they're good ones.
Yes, they were.
Big ones.
But then they all died, and I decided that if I wanted to support my family, I'd better get something that would last, and I joined CBS.
And you made that connection in New York or in Chicago?
Yes. No, I made it in New York.
In New York. Tell the youth how you went about that. That would be interesting.
Well, it was luck mostly. I wouldn't advise young people just to be lucky, but it doesn't hurt. I had planned actually. We had just moved out here to Rockland County, and I had planned to go back to Europe to do magazine pieces and freelance. But I was a little apprehensive. We had 3 little kids, and I was worried about supporting them. And a friend of mine, Charles Collingwood, was the correspondent and anchor of a program called Adventure.
Right.
And I was telling him my apprehensions, and he said, well, why don't you come work for this show I do? And I said, I don't know anything about television. He said, none of us do. So I got the job as a writer. I earned for what then for me was a munificent sum of $250 a week.
Wow.
53.
I see.
And I have worked for CBS ever since then, except for 3 years. And
You were there. Was what that you went to see?
1972, and then I came back to CBS in 1975.
And how long did you stay with Adventure and Charles Collingwood?
Oh, only for about 6 or 7 months.
Yeah.
Then my next job was as a writer for a program called The American Week, which starred Erik Severeid.
Oh.
And after, again, things moved very fast in those days. After about 6 months as a writer, I became the producer of the broadcast.
Ooh.
And I did that for a couple of years, and then I went back to Germany, but this time as a correspondent for CBS.
As a correspondent.
Mm-hmm.
Folks, we're talking to Ernest Leiser at his home in South Nyack, and we're going to be back in just a second. What you're probably wondering is, where did Ernest meet Charles Collingwood? Could you tell us that, Ernest?
Yeah, I met him in World War II, and he was a CBS correspondent. He was one of the, I was on Stars and Stripes, as I said, and he was one of the very first people that Ed Murrow hired as that famous team of correspondents that ultimately was built up into the CBS group of correspondents.
Yeah, the great school. Now, where did you go after that program you were telling us about? What was your next assignment?
Well, you mean after I produced the Severeid show, then I went back to Central Europe in 1956. It was a very exciting time, based in Germany, but I covered all of Eastern Europe. I was in Hungary for the Hungarian Revolution of 1956, and I traveled all over Eastern Europe, and then came back to the United States in 1960. And for a while was a correspondent in the United States, and then I became a news executive in 1961.
Oh, and what job was that, Ernest?
Well, I ran the hard news operation at CBS from 1961 until 1964. And then I became the executive producer of the CBS Evening News, the Cronkite News.
The executive producer.
Mm-hmm. And I did that for a few years, and then I did special events.
You did so well.
And I traveled all over the world for CBS.
Always moving up. That's nice the way you did that. Did you like being an executive as much as you liked being a correspondent? How did that go?
Well, I was a better executive than I was a correspondent. So I decided that, well, as people can tell just from looking at me on camera, I'm probably not the world's best broadcaster, but I always felt I was the world's best executive.
Now, is it Fred Friendly?
Yeah, Friendly was the president of CBS News for a couple of years only, while I was running the hard news side, and I told Mr. Friendly, who was a very difficult man to get along with, although a very talented one, that I think I told him I thought I would survive better if I got away from the office next to him and produced the evening news instead.
Oh.
And thus was history made.
Now, this is what year?
This is 1964 that I started producing the Cronkite show.
The Cronkite show. And you did that all the way up until...
Oh, no. I did that for just 3.5 years. And then after that, I became the executive producer of Special Reports, which were the instant documentaries and the instant special programs.
Wow, what a career. Could you name some of those special reports? See if they ring a bell.
Oh, golly. I could name... There were hundreds of them, literally. The program I think that I'm most proud of was 1976.
Yeah.
I was the producer of the 16.5 hours we did on the 4th of July, the bicentennial program.
Oh, yes.
And that represented a lot of work, and it turned out extremely well.
Yeah, that was a lot of satisfaction.
There's going to be a pretty exciting program, although much smaller in dimension, next year, when they have another
10 years.
It's going to be the centennial of the Statue of Liberty, and they're going to have a Operation Sail. All the tall ships from all over the world are going to go up the Hudson River for that too.
They had that in '76, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was good. That was just part of the bicentennial, but it was a very important part, and it'll be all of the celebration next 4th of July. You ought to tell the young people looking at your program that that's something they definitely should look at.
And that'll be, of course, on CBS.
Well, I'm sure it'll be on all the networks.
And do you have copies of those, that program, for instance, that you just mentioned that you're so proud of? Do you have a copy of that at home so that you can see it? Will you'd have to go down to CBS and see it.
I have scripts of them all.
Scripts, yeah,
but
right,
I haven't bothered
right.
keeping them. I would have to have a very large library in the house to have saved them all. As I say, there are literally hundreds of hours of programming that we did.
Yes, right.
We actually we did a lot more in the 60s and 70s than any of the networks do now in the 80s.
See?
It's harder to get airtime for this kind of programming.
Yes, right. And then where did you go from that? Is that when Dan Rather started to come into the picture? When Walter Cronkite?
Rather came in the picture, and I hired Dan.
You did?
Yeah, he was working for a station in Houston, KHOU, and I just happened to see there was a hurricane. I've forgotten the name of the girl's name of the hurricane, but we were looking at the output of this station, and I saw this guy and watched him for hour after hour after hour, and saw what a good broadcaster he was, saw also what great tenacity he had, and called him up to New York and said, "Would you like to work for CBS?" And he said, "Don't ask me again, I want to do it."
Isn't that interesting? Mm-hmm. You're the one who hired him.
Yeah.
And so now where are we now in the years? Are we in the...
Oh, this was in the early 60s, 1962, I guess it was, that Dan started working for CBS.
So
and he was our correspondent in our Dallas bureau for a while, and then when Johnson became president in 1964, rather being a fellow Texan, it seemed a good choice to be White House correspondent. And he went then to Washington and covered the White House.
And then came...
And then went overseas and did a lot of work in Vietnam and so on.
And the Nixon years. Now where were you at that time?
At that time, let's see, I was back in New York.
You were in New York?
As an executive producer.
As an executive producer. Would it be of the evening news?
No, this was after the evening news, and I was doing special reports.
Oh.
And Dan did a lot of those special reports, too.
Yeah, oh, okay.
Cronkite was still the #1 man, of course.
Oh, indeed.
Until 1980, really.
And is that when he retired?
That's when he semi-retired.
Mm-hmm.
He still was doing broadcasts, but
and
that's when he left the evening news in spring of '81.
And you were an executive producer then in '80?
No, I was vice president.
You were the vice president?
I had become vice president by then.
And that job consisted of what?
I was then in charge of the election coverage that we did.
Oh. Conventions,
elections, and other special events.
So would that be '81 and '82?
Yeah. The biggest day I had in those years was the day of the inauguration of Reagan and the day that the hostages were returned. Both events happened on the same day.
Were you in New York or Washington?
Well, I was going to be in Washington for the inauguration, and then when we learned that the hostages were going to be released, we had to divide it up. I stayed in New York. Rather did the hostage part of the story, and Cronkite did the inauguration.
Boy, I think you had the cream of the crop.
Had quite a good time.
And in
'83, deputy director of news coverage.
Oh, did you find that interesting?
Less than some of the other jobs, and that's one of the reasons I decided it was time for me to retire. And maybe write about some of the things I've done.
Oh, good. Are you doing that?
Well, I hope to. I haven't started yet. It's only been a week since I left.
We just got a little ahead. Now, '84, where were you? What did you do in '84?
Same thing. I was deputy director of news coverage.
And then '85?
Vice president and deputy director.
Yeah, right.
And the same thing.
And that's in November of '85 is when you retired.
Right.
Right. And now you're writing memoirs.
I haven't started writing them. I hope to. I'm trying to assemble all the material that I've accumulated over the years.
Do you look forward to that, writing?
It's a challenge. It's so different from the discipline of everyday work that it's a little scary when you start thinking about it.
Who can get used to the discipline of everyday work?
I did for 45 years.
Now, would you give the youth for getting started in news that eventually might lead to network news?
Well, first, it sounds pompous. You have to want to do it.
Yeah.
You have to want to report news, and if you're going to be in television, you have to want to broadcast news. You shouldn't worry about being the prettiest young man or woman on television. You should worry about the quality of your writing, the quality of the insights you can bring to covering stories, and you should dedicate, and you also have to work very, very hard. If this weren't television, I'd say you'd have to work your tail off, but I won't say that.
You've got to want to do it, and you've got to work very hard.
And you have to not worry about the cosmetics of it, but worry about the skills, which include first writing well. Well, no, let me back off. Thinking clearly, writing well, and equally important, being objective and not insert your own feelings into what you have to say.
Oh, see two sides, both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think
be fair and as objective as it's humanly possible to be.
Do you think going to a college and studying communications and journalism
I don't, no.
is of value?
I think that going to a college and learning about the world, learning about, as I did, about history, or learning English, or learning sociology is much more important than learning. You can always learn the narrow skills of television or newspapers on the job. And I think that's much more important than to have a broad, basic background.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
General education than it is to go to a journalism school.
Yes, but Ernest, going to a journalism school and being an intern in a place like CBS is a pretty good way to get your foot in the door, isn't it?
Starting to work for a broadcast station or a broadcast news organization of some kind, or a newspaper, is much better than coming out of Columbia School of Journalism.
All righty.
There are some of my colleagues have gone to journalism schools, but I would say the best ones got their training as journalists on the job.
Oh.
And they started in very small stations or very small newspapers and worked their way up, and again, hard work does it.
I think that hard work, and you will work hard if you really want to do it, and you will do it if you really want to do it. And it just goes down the other way if you don't. Is there any final words that you'd like to give the folks?
No, I don't have, I'm not that far along to give final words. But again, I think don't overestimate the difficulties of being a journalist. Don't overestimate the difficulties of being a broadcaster. It's not that hard. Just do the best you can.
Ernest, we certainly thank you for taking time with us and telling us about this. And
my pleasure.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Again, folks, this was Ernest Leiser, who is a retired, as of a week, Vice President of CBS Television News. This is about the worst one yet. It took over an hour and a half to get a picture of Leiser and get the tape tension and get rid of the breakup of picture because of tape tension on this one, and to get rid of the breakup of picture because of something else on this one. Something slows down on this one. So that's Sony videotape 23, rewinding at 1:06 p.m. on May the 10th, 1990.
Sit for your portrait, Leo.
I think they found a new star.
Glendora, a cheerful look at the news. If some of those interviews look a little dark to you, that's because they were done on the shortest day of the year. And a man was asked what he called the longest day of the year, and he said it was the day he had to spend with his wife Christmas shopping. A fellow was telling me that he has a very calm assistant, and nothing ever gets the assistant upset, so he calls her a Kool-Aid. And this man also says that he's always ahead of his time. Why? Well, at 25 he lost his physique instead of at 35. The Dow Jones, he says, is very good this year. And you remember last year how bad it was, the Dow Jones? It was so bad they almost spelled Dow, D-O-U-R. And he says, this man says that his kid is too fat. In fact, he's so fat that every time he drives the kid down the New York State Thruway, he has to put out a banner, oversized load. And he says that his wife will let the kid chew only Trident. And I asked, is that because it's better for his teeth? And he says, no, it's just because he has 3 teeth. He wants to call the kid the spaceship Columbia, so that he hopes someday that the kid will come back to Earth. And his mother, the kid's mother, wants him to go to high school and really make a big hit in high school. In fact, the mother wants him to hit his mark, hit the mark. And the father says, no, no, don't let him do that. That's a $25,000 car. And the mother is sort of a football widow because he likes to watch the football games on TV so much. So when the boy asked the mother, Mommy, what does NFL stand for? The mother said, National Foolishness Live. All the time you're seeing on the chroma key on television news, the NFL playoffs. If you don't look quickly, you think it says NFL playoffs. These people that I'm telling you about live in Scarsdale. There's so many famous people live in Scarsdale, right? They ought to call it Starsdale. Last year at this time was the inaugural ball for Nancy Reagan and Ronald Reagan. But for Geraldine Ferraro and Walter Mondale, it was the inaugural ball, spelled B-A-W-L. Your basic needs are food, clothing, and shelter. And that shelter, that's a tax shelter. When a ship captain comes to the Hudson River and he docks his ship, what is he judged by? He's judged by his peers. Are you going to send in the short form for the income tax this year? I tried that once, but the IRS came back to me and said that I'd use the short form okay, but I was $500 short. The sugar bowl and the orange bowl and the rose bowl, that's all you hear about now, right? All the games are fighting it out there. And then there's Drano and 2,000 flushes, they're fighting it out in the toilet bowl. Somebody asked me the interviews that we do here are done on Sony. It's my Sony. And somebody asked me, they said, is that a real Sony? Well, it sure is a real Sony.
.09 for the stamp of good health.
Call 1-800-228.
With Arthur's, as backyard value days continue at Arthur's.
Macy's Carpet Company now offers 2 rooms of carpeting with padding for only $139, up to 220 square feet. Super special offer on first quality 100% nylon for only $139. Stairs and installation additional. Call Macy's Carpet Company. We'll come to your home or office. Day and evening appointments. We'll measure, you select. Most jobs installed within 72 hours. Major credit cards welcome. We serve the entire metropolitan area.
It just may seem that way because...
Wait, the man
Our maintenance supply, where service is an art. Floor machine rentals, floor sanders and edgers, $15 for 24 hours or $15 for the weekend, Friday through Monday. Shampooers, waxers, or vacuums, $12 for 24 hours or $12 for the weekend, Friday through Monday. Call and make your reservation, 718-282-0900. We sell maintenance supplies and janitor supplies. Atlantic Floor Maintenance Supply, 1086 Rogers Avenue, Brooklyn. We teach you to do it yourself.
Do you have the guts to cross our city streets? Every year, New York drivers slam into...
The rest of Sony tape, videotape 25 is blank. On the Sony AV3400. From here, we went to the Canon and taped all the commercials off the air with the Canon. The Canon VME1. It was somewhere around 1987. Say around May or June. So that would be exactly 3 years ago. and your guest today is Harold Siegelab. And Harold, you are a real estate investor.
Is different than what the classic investor looks for. I specialize in buying undervalued commercial real estate.
Oh, I see. All over the country. Apparently you have a property in Texas that's moving along?
Yes, there was, matter of fact, a story about that property in the Wall Street Journal just a little earlier this year. 750,000 square foot industrial building that is vacant that I have taken an option to purchase.
Really? Now, Harold, how do you hear about something so far away, 2,000 miles away?
Well, you have to spend enough time networking over a period of time where you know people throughout the country who are working on the kinds of deals that they know you're looking for, and they'll call you about them.
Were you born in Westchester, Harold?
No, as a matter of fact, I was born in New York City, in the Bronx.
New York City?
Yes, in Parkchester, as a matter of fact.
And then you went to school where?
Went to the New York City public schools, followed by James Monroe High School in the city, and moved up to Harrison as a teenager and finished high school at Harrison High School.
Harrison High.
Okay.
And then did you go to college? Did you go on?
Yes, I went out to school in Colorado first, University of Denver for a year and a half, and then transferred to Penn State.
To Penn State?
Penn State.
Yeah.
I graduated there in 1965.
In 1910. You're very honest, very candid. Harold, when you were out of college, what was your first job?
I answered an ad in the New York Times, strangely enough, for a mortgage broker. And for the first 10 years of my business career out of school, I was involved as acting as an intermediary, representing developers who needed money and intermediating between them and financial institutions that loaned them money, a broker.
Oh, that's good, yes. And then after those 10 years, what did you do?
Well, in 1974, 1975, the real estate industry nationally underwent a major breakdown. What happened was a tremendous number of real estate transactions or projects went bad because there was a lot of overlending caused by excess funds generally lent by the real estate investment trusts. At that time, I simply saw some deals that were having problems and went in and became a principal.
Oh, that's good. This is Harold Siegelab, and he's going to come back, folks, and he's going to tell the youth how to get started in real estate investing. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Harold Siegelab, what did you take in college that enabled you to be qualified to take the job right out of college as a mortgage broker?
Strangely enough, there was nothing that I took in college that, quote, prepared me, unquote, to be a real estate broker. I majored in college in the liberal arts, majored in the subject of psychology and minored in American history. No financial background at all, either in college or in high school, and yet the business that I moved into was dealing with numbers, financial brokerage. On the other hand, understanding people, how they act, how they react, which of course is psychology, the study of psychology, I've always felt is more important than knowing the nuances and the technical work involved in what you're doing. Understanding how people act, why they act the way they do, so that you can act as the salesman I was and still am, to convince them to do the things that I thought was good for them. Of course, technically, I probably understand the brokerage business as well as most developers do, so I can give them that advice.
And Harold, what advice would you give a youth to get started in this kind of real estate investment?
Well, it's almost impossible to suggest to a young person to come into the real estate investment business cold. Simply because it takes capital to be a real estate investor. The better question in my mind is, how does one prepare to become an investor, and how does one get into the real estate business in the first place? And I guess the answer that I have is really you have to take a little bit of risk. This is one of the 2 or 3 major professions, the other major one being, I think, brokerage, retail brokerage on Wall Street, where the entry-level pay is really not all that terrific. It's lower than what you would normally be paid if you took a more static, a more stable job in a corporate environment. However, I strongly recommend to people that they take that risk in the first and second year of business, because it comes back to pay off further down the road once you're in the business. I want to convey another thought along that same line, particularly to young people who are having difficulty getting that first job, who can't necessarily prepare either by going through college or by completing a four-year education. And that is to say that the brokerage business is one where you are paid as the result of production. That is to say, you're paid when you perform the role of intermediary and the transaction closes. Very few real estate brokerage firms want to pay you while you're learning how to do that brokerage. It's not a business, as I stated before, which trains its people and pays them while they're being trained. This means that you may have to be prepared to come into the real estate business not receiving a lot of income. However, if you follow the earnings curve of a successful real estate person, I think you'll see that it starts very low, but quickly moves up if you're good in the business.
If you're good at it, right?
Yes.
That's very good, yeah. Well, Harold, we thank you very much for spending time with us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. Take care.
Thank you.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Folks, Chat with Glendora is continuing, and now we have an organist, Frank Cimino. And Frank, tell us how you got started in the career as an organist, and tell the youth how they might get started.
It'd be my pleasure, Glendora. Thank you. First of all, as an awful lot of organists do start out, they start out with piano lessons, and so did I at the age of 7 years old, and took 2.5 years of piano. And then for my 10th birthday, my mother and dad brought me to the Radio City Music Hall for a show, and I heard the mighty Wurlitzer there for the first time, and fell madly in love with the imposing sounds as well as the sight of it all. And I announced then to my father, who was a prominent attorney, I said, that's what I want to do for a living. Well, he told me that they don't make these anymore, and I said, I don't care, I'm going to do it anyway. And indeed, he said, well, I wish you all the luck in the world, and now I'm a professional theater organist for 34 years.
And you made a go of it, right?
Sure did.
And what was the magic of that? The hard work, probably.
Well, it sure takes a lot of hard work. It requires some sacrifice on one's part with regard to not going out in the ball field in the afternoon after school, associating with the right people, and of course when you love something, it makes the trials and tribulations almost disappear. Yeah. And loving the entire ambiance of the world of theater pipe organ especially, pipe organ in general, but theater pipe organ especially, yeah, was I able to willingly make the sacrifices and spend many hours in not only learning how to play, but how to build these instruments and repair them and teach them.
Yeah.
I'm all of these, professional instructor and all.
All around, all the way around.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Frank, what was the, well, it's hard for you to say, but what would you say is the greatest organ you ever played?
Well, it's not that difficult to account that. It is the New York Paramount Wurlitzer. Although all have their own charm and grace, but there was something very special about the New York Paramount Wurlitzer. It was, first of all, designed by Jesse Crawford, who was the poet of the organ back in the 20s. He started in 1922 at the Chicago Theater, and then in 1926 with his new wife, Helen Anderson Crawford, opened in November of that year at the Paramount, which was then the showplace of the world. And it had a twin console Wurlitzer. 2 consoles went on either side of the stage. Wow. And when that roared up from the pit, everybody took notice. Really, it was fantastic.
And we might point out now, the Paramount Theater has been torn down.
Yes.
And where was it, and what's there now?
Well, that was in Times Square, and it was torn down in 1965. And I was one of the very lucky people to be one of the folks who played that organ that day for the final concert. Wow. For an audience of about 1,500 organ enthusiasts. Wow. And it was very difficult because there we were sitting playing this gorgeous instrument, and it was perfectly maintained. And the next morning, we knew that it was going to be dismantled and then crated and shipped. Speaking about the maintenance of the organ, the Wurlitzer Company built that organ in 1926, and they had a man under their employ called Dan Papp, P-A-P-P, and he was assigned to the supervision of the installation of that organ and maintained that organ himself all those years. He sort of married it, as it were. He couldn't let that one go.
What was the great thrill about playing that organ? Why did it thrill you so much?
Well, there was a magic between the design of the organ, the acoustics of the theater. It was a very unique marriage between the two. And then the entire magical package was further enhanced by being at the crossroads of the world, Times Square.
Oh, I see.
And the whole thing just felt so good and sounded so wonderful.
What happened to the organ?
It had been, well, it has a very unique history. It had been bought by a theater in Oakland, California. They were going to turn the theater into a theater museum, and then they were going to show silent movies and all that used to go on in the 20s, but that whole idea fell through. And then the town of Wichita got the instrument, but in the interim, the console was vandalized and was burnt. And so an organ company called Balcom and Vaughn had to, were commissioned to replace the organ console in perfectly accurate dimensions, and they did a magnificent job. It's hard to tell that it's not the original. The console replacement cost $45,000, just the console.
Yeah.
And but anyway, now the organ is reinstalled in the Civic Center in Wichita. It's called Century 2, and is played just about nightly by Mr. Billy Knoll. And they feature the organ 3 times a week, to my knowledge, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday, in a come on, come all dance type thing where you can sit there and party and dance to the favorite songs. And what's unique about these organs is that you can play any kind of music on them, all the top 40 or the old songs from the 20s or classics or anything.
Yeah. Well, so you see, you're a living example that if you really want to do it badly enough, you'll find a way.
If you just eliminate negatives from your goals, you'll accomplish anything you set out to do.
That's nice to hear, yeah. Frank Cimino, we thank you again.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
John Holland. But he didn't come to me and ask me to do it. I did it because he's good, he's honest. I know he could help you, and, well, of course, because we're friends.
Uh-huh. And, well, in that case, you know he's in the business selling something I need. Okay, is it really taking unfair advantage of the friendship to let Mr. Hollick know that now you're in the insurance business selling something that he and many people that he knows may need? Don't you think that once he knows you're in this business, he'll want to help you if he can?
Well, he's always taken an interest in how I've been doing. Maybe I should ask him.
Now you're talking. You know, chances are Mr. Hollick isn't the only reference center on that list. Remember, it's anyone who's a center of activity and influence who'd like to see you do well. Besides business people, it's
This is nice.
Yeah, I replaced that. That's a part is still, I can get, you know, the most part is this one. Is the important part that I cannot get it. That, you know, that the one is...
the head?
The head is, I get it, but the one mechanism part, you know, mechanism part that holding...
You can't get that.
No,
and you can't get this new head.
I get this is a new, they replaced the old one.
This is a new head?
Right, this is a new head.
Oh, okay. And but this plate you had to cut around?
Right, that one is, it won't fit. This is a new head.
That's the new head. You cleaned it.
This is, I got this is my old one.
That's the old head?
No, this is not the whole head. The whole head is the other one. This one it has no good. This is the old head.
This was my old head?
No,
and this one had worn out.
This one is no good at all. It's not working.
Was this mine?
Yeah, this is a brand new one.
Yeah, but what is this one? My old one?
Right, the old one. This
is
bad.
My old one.
Right. You see, this chassis is different.
Yes.
It won't fit.
Yes.
When you put it in, it won't come down because this part. And then normally if they replace the head, you can replace the base too.
Yeah, with
but this one you cannot replace because.
So you left the base out?
I took it out from Jewel, and then I.
Oh, you took it off of mine and drilled a hole? That's very clever.
No, put it, otherwise I cannot put it in. Because,
sure, that's very clever.
And Alice and the children? That's great. Say, George, can we have coffee tomorrow morning? There's something I'd like to ask you. No, nothing urgent, but I do need your help with something. Hey, Lone.
Do you ever want them maybe for junk or something?
No, I think it, let's see.
You want me to do a program for you? Here, let me interview you. Oh, we're rolling. What do you think of this place?
Well, it's rather too technical for me, but I have a lot of respect for the people who work with these things and put them together and take them apart.
That's good.
Understand them.
Very nice. And what do you think of Paul?
Paul is a fine person, I think. He knows what he's doing. He's lived with these things for a long time, I guess.
You're very good.
He's equal to any challenge.
You want to sing the Lord's Prayer?
No.
Our Father. Well, we'll see you next time, folks. Bye now.
Bar insurance today. Now, let me just describe the kind of person I'm interested in seeing. No, in general, it's people that...
Born in Scarsdale? Or?
No, I was not. I was born on the South Shore of Long Island.
Oh, you were? Right.
And moved to Westchester County 21 years ago.
Oh, that practically makes you a native.
Right.
And you went to school where? Probably in Long Island to start out
Right, I went to Lawrence High School.
Lawrence High School, yeah. And then you went to college where?
I went to college at the University of Pennsylvania, the Wharton School.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's very, very good school. And what were your first jobs out of school?
Well, I first went into retailing when I got out of the Army, because I was in the Army during the Korean War.
That's right. You were of Alexander's.
Correct.
Right.
Before that, I was in the merchandising end of retailing with Gimbels.
Merchandising. Now, what is merchandising for the youth?
I was buying men's clothing for about 3 or 4 years.
That's why you're so sartorially correct. And then after, this is Carmino, and then after that, what did you do, Mr. Shulman?
I decided I didn't want to remain in the buying end of retailing, and I went back to Columbia University Graduate School and got my degree in accounting.
Oh, you did?
Master's in accounting.
That's a master's in is that in business, or is that just?
It's the Graduate School of Business.
But it's in
accounting, the specific field.
Is that constitute an MBA, or?
It was an MS at that time. It's now an MBA today.
Right. And then you went back into, is that when you
Then I went into accounting.
Oh, and that was for Alexander's?
No, I worked for a large, accounting firm for about 10 years.
10 years?
And then went back into retailing in the controller's end with Caldors.
Oh, with Caldors?
Right.
Uh-huh.
And I spent a couple of years with Caldors and then went to Alexander's.
Okay. That must have been pretty interesting work.
It was.
It was very interesting, yeah.
It was the controlling end of the merchandise that I had been in before.
And the controller really does what? He watches what comes in and what goes out and has the balance.
He has to balance the books as well as record all the sales, purchase all the merchandise, and account for every dollar the store takes in or expends.
Keep things in ship shape.
Right.
Yeah, that's a big job, but a very interesting one. And then I think you went to work for the county, didn't you?
Then I went to work for the county.
And that job was what?
I was the commissioner of finance for the county.
Oh, and what does that entail?
That entails basically the same kind of thing that I was doing in retailing, only on a much bigger scale. The County of Westchester's budget is a little over $700 million a year.
Wow.
And I had to account for every penny that came in and every penny that went out. And a county has to have a balanced budget, so what comes in usually goes out.
How are you at keeping the books at home? Are you good at that too?
Well, basically my wife keeps the books at home. She writes all the checks. I balance the checkbook at the end of the month, but she writes the checks. I sign my name enough and that work.
This is Mr. Schulman, folks, and he's going to come back and tell the youth in just a second how to get started in the accounting field. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
David Schulman, as an expert in finance, what's a good training? How do you get started in your training to be an accountant?
Well, you have to go to school. That's step number one. And today, in order to become a certified public accountant, which is the highest level of accounting that you can get involved with, you have to have a college degree. So step number one really is to get the college degree. Then you have to go and work for an accounting firm, such as the one I'm with right now, which is a regionally, a local firm in New Rochelle by the name of Bennett Kielsen, where we have some 40 or 50 employees, most of them training, starting out from a Pace University or a Pace College. And you get your basic grind, your basic knowledge in those first 2 or 3 years in the accounting field. Then you can go on either to stay as a certified public accountant or go into any field that requires financial assistance in the commercial side, such as I do.
Yes. Once you have your accounting education, is it hard to get a job as an accountant in a private firm, as you mentioned?
No, today accountants are very much in demand.
Oh, good.
Both in the commercial side, retailing, manufacturing, or as a certified public accountant, you're very much in demand coming out of college today.
And David Schulman, would you say that accountants get paid pretty well compared? They get paid well.
They get paid well, not as well as certain other more glamorous fields, shall I say, but it does pay well.
And David, I noticed too that very often the promotions to Chief Executive Officer very often come from the accounting department.
They definitely do. You need financial information today in order to stay a profitable business. And one of the best ways to understand finance is to understand accounting.
Yeah. Well, we want to thank you very much for dropping by and giving us the youth the advice, David.
My pleasure.
Take care.
Okay.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome, folks, to A Chat with Glendora. Last program we were talking to Frank Cimino, who is a career theater organist, and we asked him about the thrill of playing the organ in the Paramount Theater years ago before it was dismantled and moved to Wichita, Kansas. And now what do you say we go back to see Frank again and ask him about how to get started in a career as an organist. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'll take care of it more. Now we have 6. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And now, everybody, we go from the field of accounting to the field of retailing, and here's the expert, Gene Lubin. Hi, Gene.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Nice to be